Hey guys, we're back. Today we're going to be modeling. I'm not the most skilled modeler. I still have a lot to learn. A lot of the ways that I've done this may not be the fastest or the best way, and topology is a hard concept to grasp, especially when you're starting out. For when I was making the moon and the stars, I was having trouble figuring out the best ways of making the shapes. Normally I go about it by finding a shape that's closest to the object I'm trying to model, and then reforming that shape into the correct form. But with the star and the moon, I just couldn't really get it to look exactly how I wanted it to look. But these also don't have to be perfect, they're going to be a little bit farther away. But I started out doing the same way as I normally do, just making a shape and then trying to form it into the form that I want it to look like. And after trying that, it didn't really work. So what I ended up doing was getting a reference photo, and getting a plane and using the knife tool to just cut out the shape of both the moon and the star. And then I extruded the plane and gave it a solidifier modifier, which I can then give it just a little bit more thickness. So you can see how sometimes it just takes a few tries, a few think-throughs to get to where you want. But I think in the end, I'm pretty happy with how my stars and moon have turned out. I think they will look good in the final product. I still need to shade them, and I'll probably end up creating a particle system with the smaller star and give it some variability and just create a sky using those stars. And then, we went on to making the boat, which I was able to do using the methods that I'm used to using, which was getting a reference photo, lining up my square with the reference photo, and just subdividing that cube and forming the cube until it makes the boat. I was having a little trouble at first because I wasn't trusting my process. I kept trying to bezel the bottom, which just wasn't the correct way to go about it. I needed to wait until I actually had the shape of the boat to do that. But as I go through, I get more and more understanding of the shape that I'm trying to make, and just how topology really plays a role. Even after I was done with the boat, I realized that I needed to add a few more subdivisions to make the model just a little bit more solid. The way I had left it didn't have enough support systems around the sides where it was almost collapsing in on itself. But I'm happy with how the boat turned out. And then the last thing I have modeled so far was the telescope, which I put a lot of time into. You can see in my reference image, I chose a pretty old rustic telescope that has a lot of small parts and intricate parts. And as I went through, I just this was a pretty simple shape. It was just a tube. I started by getting a cylinder and then just forming that cylinder around my reference image and extruding and scaling as necessary throughout the whole process. And then as I moved on to each part, the way I understand modeling is you want to try to have one mesh for each part. You don't really want to have too many separate meshes throughout your model. So I stayed true to that, and there was one mesh for the telescope, another for the small scope up top, and then each and every part is a new cylinder basically. And then if I wanted to round something out, I just use bezels. Mostly everything I've used for this was basically just extruding, scaling, bezels. I filled a few areas, and I also used a knife tool to create the spinning wheel on there. I didn't create the chain, I didn't feel it was necessary, but I'm really happy with how this turned out, and now I just have to shade it. So I still have a lot to learn with modeling, and I still have a lot to do with this project, so bear with me. I still need to create the setting and the character himself, Bruno. I'm really excited to get to animating, so stay tuned. Thank you very much, and have a great night.